Hello everyone and welcome to this video on how to start learning Chinese. This video is part of the Chinese language pathway from Natural Language Journey, which you can find linked below. It can be really intimidating to start a new language, but with the right tools, a big task becomes a lot less daunting. In the case of Chinese, textbooks and tools like Anki can make the learning curve much more manageable. This video focuses on how to use the HSK textbook series and Anki to quickly build up a strong foundation in Chinese. While the idea of using a textbook may feel quite off-putting, maybe it brings back memories of boring school days, language textbooks are nothing like dry math textbooks. They offer well-structured lessons and gradually introduce new grammar and vocabulary, which is especially helpful for a complex language like Chinese. I want to take a moment to explain why, in my experience, starting with a textbook or structured language program is far more effective than jumping straight into immersion. You probably have seen videos online claiming that input and immersions are the best way to learn a language, and that you don't need to study grammar. While that might work for a small number of people, it's simply not true for most learners. I say this as someone who has actually learned a language through the input approach. My first foreign language was German, which I picked up as a heritage speaker. I learned it almost entirely through YouTube and conversations with native-speaking family members, but it was a slow process and stretched over many years, and I didn't feel comfortable speaking until I was about 16 years old. Although my listening skills were strong and I could hold conversations pretty easily, I had significant gaps in my abilities. I often didn't know basic vocabulary or grammar structures, and writing full sentences was really difficult. My native language English would also often influence my German, leading to mistakes because I'd never learned the correct phrasing. For example, I used to say ein Foto nehmen, which literally means to take a photo, a direct translation from English, instead of the correct ein Foto machen, which is the proper phrasing in German. This kind of interference is really common when learning a new language. Language learners have to unlearn what sounds right in their native language and replace it with what's actually correct in their target language. Oftentimes, even when you hear a native speaker use the correct grammar patterns, those don't always transfer into your brain. And these habits can be hard to fix once they're in place. A lot of grammar isn't intuitive, and that's why even native speakers have to study their own grammar in school for years. A textbook gives you the structure and foundation you need early on. It guides you with clear goals and tasks, which are essential when you're just starting out. Since learning German, I've used this approach for every language I've studied, and I fully stand by it. While textbooks become less necessary after the intermediate level, they're incredibly helpful for beginners. I highly recommend starting here if you want to build solid skills from the beginning. The HSK textbook series is particularly well designed, providing plenty of examples and opportunities to reinforce what you've learned. I recommend using the HSK books up to HSK 4, since by then you should have a strong enough foundation to branch out into more engaging and immersive materials. While this guide uses the HSK series and the Anki deck is tailored to the HSK books, the strategies I described can be applied to any textbook. You'll just need to create and find your own Anki decks. You'll find all of the resources I mentioned, including textbooks, flashcard decks, and videos, linked in the article in the description below. When accessing the article with all of the resources mentioned, you will either have your resources linked as links that you can click on, or as videos, which you can watch on YouTube by clicking on this button here. Now let's start by going over how to use the textbook. Before we start going into detail on the textbook, I'll give you an overview of how I recommend using it. I recommend starting by reading through the lesson first, with audio, and then watching any grammar explanation videos. You should also be studying Anki flashcards alongside the main lesson. However, you may alter your study order depending on what works best for you. When you first start an HSK lesson, it will present you with a dialogue. Read the dialogue out loud to the best of your ability. You are not expected to be able to understand it all. It is a preview of what will be covered in the lesson. Here you'll also be presented with a list of new words. Briefly read through the new words to get an idea of what will be in the lesson. This is a good place to start studying flashcards, but you do not need to go through all of the flashcards before you start reading the rest of the lesson. You will pick up a lot of vocabulary you need through context as you read through the lesson. Vocabulary is also not something that should be crammed. You should only study as much as you feel you can remember. So, for example, if I were to go through this lesson, I would start by reading these out loud. You have the pinyin provided up top, so even if you don't know the words yet, you can still try your best to read it out loud. So here I would say, 你女儿几岁了? And then, 她今年4岁了. It's also good practice to record yourself and compare it to the provided audio. For the official audio, you can find it on YouTube, and it's also linked in the article below. As you listen to the audio, try mimicking it as close as you can. Again, it's really good practice to record yourself and then compare it to the official audio to see where your weak spots are. At this level, you're going to have a really hard time identifying your mistakes, but it's still a good idea to get into this habit.
你女儿几岁了？
你女儿几岁了？
他今年4岁了。
她今年4岁了。Listen to the dialogue a few times until you feel comfortable with the material. If it's all already familiar with you, that's great. You can just listen to it through once and then go ahead and move on to the next section. The next section you'll notice here are the notes section. This is where they give some grammar explanations. This up here is the exact same as this, it's just the Chinese translation. You don't need to worry about this part. This is more for teachers. You won't know most of these words yet. For these down here, you'll notice that they don't have pinyin on them, but that's because these are words that you should have already learned. If you're keeping up with your Anki deck, then you should be able to read all or at least most of these words. In the case that you don't know a word, you can highlight it, just highlight the entire sentence. You can use Control-C or Command-C if you're on a Mac, and then paste it into Google Translate. When you paste it into Google Translate, it will give you the pinyin down here. I use this a lot when I come across Hanzi that I don't know. Next, you'll come to the grammar section. Read through the explanation and sentences. However, this is just your first introduction to these grammar patterns. It's great if you immediately understand them, but it's also okay if you don't. You will review these sentence patterns again when you watch the explanation video and when you go through the exercises. For a more in-depth look at the grammar for each HSK lesson, I highly recommend Chinese Zero to Heroes HSK Grammar Series. You can find it linked in the article below. Watch these to reiterate what you read in the lesson. Don't worry too much about understanding every word. You will review all of this information multiple times. Also, some of the example words he uses in the videos are words you probably haven't seen yet. Don't worry about memorizing them. You will see them again later. You can find the playlists for all HSK levels on their YouTube channel under Playlists. The HSK series also has a variety of practical exercises built into the textbook, along with a workbook to accompany each lesson. Doing the exercises, such as these ones here, is a great way to start building sentences. In this exercise, simply plug in vocabulary words into the example sentences. You can either write down your answer or say it out loud. Also, you can always refer back to the vocab list for these exercises if you don't have all the words memorized yet. The point of these exercises is to build familiarity. To check your answers, you will also have access to an answer sheet. While most of these should be pretty straightforward, if you're not sure, you can either check against the answer sheet or check online. If you don't understand the answer to a question even after looking at the answer, you can use a tool like ChatGPT to give you an explanation, or you can use a website like Hi Native to ask for an explanation. Here in the workbook, you'll see more exercises to help you practice what you learned in the lesson. I recommend doing this after you have gone through the lesson in its entirety, including listening to the audio, watching the grammar explanation, and doing the exercises. You should also be caught up with your Anki flashcards to this lesson. Now you know how to go over all of the components that make up an HSK lesson. As you progress, they will start to build upon each other into more complex dialogues and grammar. Next, we will go over the Anki flashcards and how to use them to learn vocabulary alongside each lesson. Anki flashcards should be studied alongside the main lesson since vocabulary is best picked up over time with repetition. You can find the Chinese vocabulary deck for HSK 1 through 4 linked below. This deck only goes up to HSK 4 because I don't recommend going above HSK 4 with a textbook. After HSK 4, I would instead encourage you to seek out more native resources. When you open the deck in Anki, it will look like this here. You will likely need to adjust the number of new cards and reviews you see each day to match your study schedule and lifestyle. To do so, go into Deck Options, then set the number of new words per day that you feel is a good amount for you. This will actually only be 5 new words a day, as you will have 2 different types of cards for each word. So if you would like to do 10 new words a day, then set this to 20. You may need to adjust it a few times as you get used to studying vocabulary. For more information on how to use Anki, check out my full guide on how to use Anki for Chinese linked below. There are 2 different card types you will be presented with. The first card type is the recognition card. This card will ask you to recognize the word and remember its meaning and pronunciation. Type the Hanzi into the box to reinforce your typing skills and your ability to recall the Hanzi. If you would prefer to write it on a piece of paper, that also works. So for this card here, with my Chinese keyboard enabled, I would type in 老师, 老师, right? Because my goal would be to read this. And then if you can, try to read the sentence. In the beginning, it's going to be very unlikely that you're able to read all of the sentences, and that's okay. Your main focus is the word itself. The sentence will come later. For me, I really like to practice my pronunciation and reading whenever I do cards. So I will use Anki's built-in recording feature. So down here, you will go to record own voice or use Shift V. On mobile, this is a little bit different, but I explain it in my full Anki video. So record voice, and then I will read this. 老师,我不是老师. And then save it. Now that I've written my word and I've recorded my audio, let's look at the back of the card to see if I got it correct.
老师，我不是老师。
So each card comes with audio, so you can hear the word and then also compare your pronunciation. If I want to hear my pronunciation, I would go down here and click on Replay Own Voice. 老师,我不是老师. And so then I will compare that and note any weak areas. As you can see here on the back of the card, we have the Hanzi, the pinyin, and the English definition down here. Remember, if you don't know the tones, you don't know the word. If we scroll down a little bit more, you'll also see an animation of how to write these characters. This is for if you are practicing writing by hand. I personally don't really practice writing by hand as it's not a skill that I use, but for those who like writing by hand, this is a fantastic feature to have. You can also see down here which HSK lesson this word comes from, so you can adjust your study plan to keep up with your textbook. These buttons here will replay the audio. These buttons down here are how you will grade yourself. So for me, 老师 is a really easy word to remember. I know all the tones, I've got it down, so I would put it as easy. If you have a little bit of trouble remembering it, but you still know it pretty well, you would do good. If you got any of your tones wrong, or maybe a character wrong, but you know the general word, do hard, and if you couldn't remember it all, do again. How you grade yourself dictates when you will see the word again, so it's better to grade yourself a little bit harshly than too loosely. It doesn't hurt to review more. The second type of card is a recall card. You will be prompted with an example sentence with a vocabulary word removed and the English translation. Your goal is to type the correct Hanzi in the given space. If you are struggling to understand the sentence, you can click on English sentence to see the translation. However, I would avoid this unless you need it. So here on this card, I want to come up with the Chinese word for country or nation. This is 国. So I'm going to type 国 here into the blank. Number 2 is the correct Hanzi for 国, but I'm going to choose the wrong one so you can see what happens when an answer is wrong. I also like to try and read out the entire sentence. 我是美国人,你呢? If you feel pretty confident about your pronunciation, you don't necessarily have to record yourself every time, but it really does help to get used to saying all of these words over and over and over again. Now let's take a look at the back.
国，我是美国人，你呢？
On the back, you will see the pinyin reading, hear the audio, and see the key vocabulary word. Here again, you'll grade yourself on how well you were able to remember the word. Remember, if you don't remember the tone, you don't remember the word. Same goes for if you can't remember the Hanzi, then you don't know the word fully. In this case, if I got the Hanzi wrong, but I knew the pinyin with the correct tone, I would probably put this as hard, so that I see it again soon. You will notice that everything is in Hanzi from the beginning. This is to get you used to reading as early as possible. Hanzi is one of the hardest parts of Chinese, so learning it early will make it a lot easier when you want to use native resources later on. If you come across a Hanzi you don't know, simply copy it and look it up in a Chinese-English dictionary. If you're on a desktop computer or laptop, then I recommend Train Chinese. If you're on mobile, then I recommend either Train Chinese or Pleco. You will spend a lot of time looking up words in the dictionary, so this is great practice for later. Anki is fully customizable, so even with a pre-made deck like this, you can still customize it to fit your personal goals and study habits. If you want to change or add something to a card, click on the Edit button in the bottom left corner. Here you can add information or remove information from any of the given fields. And that's everything you need to know to start learning Chinese. For more information and more tips and tricks, as well as resources for continuing your Chinese language journey, please check out the full Chinese language pathway on naturallanguagejourney.com. I hope you found this video useful, and I look forward to seeing you next time. Bye-bye.